Hi, I'm Trisha Farron, and you're watching Keeping the Real in Real Estate. I'm a realtor in Newtown, Connecticut with William Ravis, and in today's episode, I'm going to go over the top 5 questions that home sellers ask me. Of course, the first question is, what's my home worth? Well, it's not as easy an answer as you might think. A lot of home sellers rely on some commercial tools like Zillow to help them determine what their property's worth. That's not the right way to go. Even worse is going based on feeling and the memories that you have in your home. I know that having the marks of your child's growth coming up on the door is very important to you, and how little Susie lost her tooth in the backyard when she was playing with little Bobby, precious. But anybody buying your house could care less. They want to know, what is the house worth based on what other homes like yours has sold for? Not what's on the market, not what's gone under contract, but what have they actually sold for? So one of the first things that I do when I help a seller decide how much their house is worth is I take a tour of the home and I look at what improvements were made since the time that they bought it. Where are some delayed maintenance issues or any other concerns? And then I take that information and I compare it to what other homes having the same specs in the same geographic area have sold for. A house is worth what a buyer is willing to pay for it. Now, there'll be some anomalies. Maybe a cash buyer will be willing to pay a lot more because they don't necessarily need to go through the appraisal process, so they can determine what the value is to them. And there may be some items that are quality of life issue that they're willing to pay a premium for. That kind of skews the numbers a little bit, but when you look at over a course of time, I like to go 90 days, and if I need to, I'll go up to 6 months. I like to go within a mile or 2 of the property. If I have to, I'll go up to 5. And I try to stay within the same bedroom count, bathroom count, square footage, give or take about 500 square feet, and certainly the style of the home. You don't want to compare a colonial to a contemporary or to a ranch. When you take all those factors together and you see it over time, then you can get a better sense to say, well, this is what I believe your house would sell for based on today's current market conditions. Now, that number would change if you wait 6, 8, 12 months, 2 years. That number is not going to be the same. I urge you not to look at Zillow's estimates because that's an algorithm. That's just taking some specs over the course of a geography area, time. It's not taking everything into consideration. In order to value the house properly, you need a human to go in the home and do a real analysis. That will give you a really good sense. And I always give a range too. I can't possibly say your house is going to sell for this exact amount, but I could say, based on everything that I've seen in the current market and with the way your house looks, this is the range that I think a buyer would be willing to pay. So that's question number 1. The second question that is very common is, do I have to update the house? Now, that's a loaded question. I think it's terrible to go ahead and put in a new kitchen and refinish the floors and do all this work just so somebody else can enjoy it. But we have to look and see, like, how bad is the kitchen? Is your counter cracked? Are the doors falling off the cabinets? Like, is it gross? Because if it's gross, then we have to determine, how does that play out with the way the rest of the house looks? Maybe you sell it as is and you lower the price enough to make it appealing to somebody who says, all right, I know I have to do the kitchen, I know I have to do the bathrooms, I have to do all this work, but look at the price. It's a good price that allows me the room to make these upgrades and bring the property value up to what the normal standards would be. One of the things that I always recommend is clean. Now, I know people say, well, I clean the house all the time. But you don't clean it for somebody else to be evaluating it. You clean it as a matter of living in it. So there are things that are a part of the house, I guarantee you don't see. Even the most meticulous people are appalled when I point out some of the stuff, like the handprints around the door handles and the light switches. Those are really common areas. A little bit of wear and tear on some heavily used areas. A lot of times it's like the front door, the plate that's at the bottom, that it's just scuffed up because of people stepping on it in the rain, in the snow, in just daily use. There's a lot of things that if you just walked around, there's a layer of dust that I'm sure you don't see that's on your curtains or on the frames of the paintings that you have on your walls. So on the surface, you kind of look around, you're like, my house is clean, but is it? And does it have any sense that maybe you have become accustomed to, but that maybe somebody coming in for the first time immediately is hit with a scent that doesn't make sense? I learned a long time ago in a chocolate tour that you get used to the smells that are around you. Like a person who works in a chocolate factory doesn't smell chocolate, but I walk in and it's loaded with chocolate, and that's because it's a new scent to me. So when you're living in a house and you're smelling the same things over and over, you don't get a chance to really determine whether there's a new scent unless something new comes in. So like if your dog gets sprayed by a skunk, you'll know that because that's a different smell. But the smell of your food every day, or the smell of your perfumes, or the things that you use that create the scent in your house, you're not going to notice. So when I come in, and I'm not nasty about it, but I'll go, this smells musty, or I think we can maybe open the windows and air out this room. Because that's what a buyer is going to feel. They're going to be like, it smells funny in here. And they may not be able to identify what that odor is, but we certainly don't want their impression to be something negative. So when you're thinking about selling your house and preparing it, is it grubby? Is it like, do you walk into a room and go, oh. If you do, then let's talk about what things can be done. Do you need to paint? Maybe. Maybe painting sounds like a good idea. Neutral colors. This is not when we're getting into the cobalt blue trend that may be from a few years ago. What we want to do is make it so that it's a clean canvas that somebody else can picture their stuff in it. Take half your stuff out of the rooms. You're going to have to pack and move anyway, so you may as well start now. Get yourself a pod, get yourself a storage room, or use the basement, use the garage. Just start packing stuff away. You'd be amazed how different a room can look when you open the blinds and take out a lot of the extra tchotchkes and decor things that you have in there. Minimize your closets by half. Get throw pillows, add a pop of color, put an area rug in. These things add so much to make the home look warm and lived in a nice way. If something's broken, fix it. Another idea that I have for some sellers, especially when they've been living in the house for a long time, is get it inspected. So it'll run you a few $100s. Isn't that better to know what's wrong with your house? Like, what happens if you find out you have mold in the attic and you're never in your attic? Once you have a buyer, believe me, somebody's going to find out that there's mold in the attic and you're going to have to take care of it. So you may as well not be blindsided. Go into this full eyes open, knowing what's going to be coming down the pike when a buyer does an inspection. And you could at that point decide whether it is you want to fix it, or you want to wait to see what the buyer has to say, or price your house accordingly. But certainly you don't want to turn a blind eye to it. And that leads me to my third question. What do I need to tell the buyers about the house? Everything. This is not a time to hide things under the rug. If there was a leak, a plumbing issue, if you had mold, if you had a pest issue, anything that's structural, anything that's a material fact about the house, that if somebody knew about this would help them to decide whether or not they want the house, you have to disclose this. You could get into a lot of trouble if it comes out that you knew about something and didn't disclose it. They went and bought the house and now it incurred an expense or some safety related issue on their part. You can get sued. So it's better to just put all your cards on the table and say, listen, I've lived in this house for this amount of time. These are the things that I've dealt with that I've either fixed or are still a pending problem. And how do you want to deal with it? We all need to sleep at night. And believe me, it's not just about ethics. It's about the law. You need to disclose what's going on in your house. Now, the only time you don't is if you're selling a house that you never lived in, because it was like willed to you. So like if you have an elderly parent that's passed away and you now have their home that you need to sell, you do not need to fill out disclosures for them, because how would you know what's going on in the house if you've not lived there? So that's a very important thing. I'm a stickler for that too. Anything that is told to me becomes public information. And after an inspection is done, everything that was found in the inspection that's disclosed to the selling side also becomes a part of the listing. So if a buyer goes ahead and does an inspection, doesn't like the outcome and pulls out and tells you all the things they found, we now have to include that as part of the listing. So it's better to just do this right from the beginning and know that there's no secrets that you know about. There might be things that are uncovered that you didn't know, and that'll be a new situation for all of us to handle at that time. So question number 4, when's the best time to sell? So this is tricky because there's a common thought that spring and fall are the best times to sell. And that's because that's when the buyers come out. I don't know if I agree with that. I feel like as a seller, you want to present your house when there's the least amount of competition. Because, I mean, this is economics. The more supply, the lower the price, depending on demand. So, we've been in a seller's market for several years now, and it seems to not going to be changing anytime soon. And that's because there's not enough inventory for the amount of buyers that are out there. So if all the sellers are waiting until spring to put their houses on the market because they think that that's when the buyers are coming out, that's just going to increase competition for you. So I kind of say, let's reverse it. When do you want to buy a house? When do you want to sell? When do you want to move? And see how that timeline works with or against what current market trends are. I'm definitely the person that doesn't just say, well, this is what's typically done. I very much want to know this is what's happening right now and how this new situation can apply to it. So if the new situation is a buy and a sell situation, as a buyer, you're going to encounter certain things that are going to be in your favor and some things against you in a certain market, and the same as a seller. So what we're looking for is the best combination of both so that you come out as much ahead as you can in both situations. So I'm not going to sit here and say that spring and fall are the best times. I'm going to say that they are popular times, and that could be good or bad depending on your situation. The 5th question is, what is my responsibility to the house while it's on the market? And my simple answer, the same as it's been since you've been living in it. You're going to mow the lawn. You're going to repair things that break. You're going to keep it clean. You're going to continue to operate the home in the same manner that you have been all the way until closing. When a buyer is in the middle of a transaction, so you haven't accepted an offer, and now they're trying to get their mortgage, they're going to come back for inspections. They may not see the house again until the walkthrough at closing. That house has to look as much as it can to the day that they went to the inspection, or else there's going to be a problem at the closing. So if if let's say you kept everything great the whole time, and then on moving day, your movers scratch the wall as they're going down the steps with your bed, you got to fix that. That is not something that the buyer saw the last time that they inspected the home. They're not expecting to see a gash in the wall. Normal wear and tear is of course okay, especially if there's a long sales cycle. But what we're trying to do is, you can't just flake out on like the lawn. If it's winter, you still have to snow plow. You have to make sure if it's a vacant home, you still have to make sure that it has electricity and that it has heat. If you're not going to be around and you want to minimize those expenses, you can winterize the house. And there's pluses and minuses to that as well. But the bottom line is you absolutely need to maintain the house all the way until closing. I have a bonus question for you. With the situation that we have now with multiple offers coming in many of the homes, sellers are unsure how best to evaluate those multiple offers. It doesn't always make best sense to pick the highest price. And the reason why is because the highest price is just a number. There's a lot that has to happen for it to get to closing with that number. For instance, if they're getting a mortgage, let's say for instance you put your house on the market for $400,000 and it's worth within $15,000 of that, and you get an offer for $475,000. Okay, it's exciting, and you want to be able to reap the benefits of a better return. But if your buyer has to get a mortgage that mortgage company is going to require an appraisal. And an appraisal is going to do similar to what I do when I'm trying to give you a value of what that home is worth. They're going to look at closed houses that look like yours and that have the same level of updates in the same geography and around the same time period. If all the houses that they look at are within 5 or 10,000 of what we listed that house for, how is it going to appraise for $475? So it sounds wonderful to take that offer, but what you're doing is you're just kicking the ball down the court for it to inevitably go foul, because they're going to come back and say the house didn't appraise. What are we all doing about it? A mortgage company is not going to give a mortgage to a buyer to a house that they are paying more than what it's worth, unless they're willing to come to the table with more cash to even things out. But not many buyers are able to do that, and that's just going to put everybody into a pickle. And now it's been several weeks down the line where maybe you could have picked a different offer. Now, not to say that an elevated price is not good, but we need to understand all the terms. When do they want to close? What do they want from you? Are there specific concessions that they're looking for you to do? Who's their lender? Is it some fly-by-night company that we've never heard of that is in many states away? Or is it somebody local who knows the market? One of the things I like to do is I like to speak to the lender and find out, did you do all that you needed to do to pre-approve this buyer? And that means not just type in some numbers into a calculator. We're looking for their credit to be pulled. We're looking for their assets and debt to be analyzed and verified, their employment to be verified. We want to make sure that the buyer is not using an old pre-approval too. When was this last done? It's great. I'm so glad that you got pre-approved last August, but this year the rates are different and those pre-approvals don't last a year. So if they're coming in utilizing an old pre-approval, that's a red flag for me. I also want to know how much money they're putting down. Now this I don't use as strongly as maybe some others do, because if I've spoken to the lender and the buyer has gotten pre-approved with a certain amount down and a certain amount of credit and whatever it is that they're trying to do, as long as I trust the lender and that they've done everything right, who am I to say you have to put down 20%? That's very difficult for a lot of buyers to do. And in some cases, they may have the money and choose not to put it down so that they have a cash reserve to make whatever updates they want to do, decorate, or even have some savings still left in their account. So when I'm evaluating these, I know that a lot of sellers look and say, oh, they're only putting 3% down. They must not be serious. That's not the case. It does take quite a bit for these folks to save up, even a 3% deposit, plus closing costs, plus moving expenses and everything that goes along with it. I don't necessarily think that that's a component that we have to give a lot of weight to. There's a lot of other things that we can look at. Are they waiving the appraisal gap? Are they waiving inspections? Like, what other components? So when we look at all the offers that come in, everything has a consideration. It's not just the purchase price. And then we talk about who do we think, whose offer is going to give the least amount of risk to you as the seller. And that's the one that we pick. So I hope these answers to these most popular questions asked by sellers has helped you. And like I said, if you need, if you have other questions or have other information that you would like me to provide, reach out to me. I love to talk real estate and I'd be happy to. I'm also able to come through and give you a complimentary home evaluation. I'd be happy to take a look, give you a honey-do list. Careful, because I can get quite picky. But it'll give you an idea, even if you're not thinking of selling now, what things you might want to do that will actually help give a better value to your home and make it more attractive to buyers, or save you some money and not focus on doing things that you thought you had to do that you don't really have to. And if anything, it gives you a good benchmark of what your house is worth today and what it might be worth maybe in a year when you're looking to sell. Thanks for watching. Until next time.